Good day, students! Welcome to Teacher Sally YouTube channel. In today's video lesson, I will discuss about sex-related inheritance, such as sex-linked trait, sex-limited trait, and sex-influence trait. Are you ready? Then let's begin.
Learning objectives. Number 1, explain sex-related inheritance traits. And number 2, solve genetic problems related to sex-linked traits. Let's recall, in the nucleus of every body cell, there are 46 chromosomes, 22 homologous pair or autosomes, and 1 pair of sex chromosomes. Now, what is the difference between an autosome and a sex chromosome? Autosomes are the first 22 homologous pairs of human chromosomes that do not influence the sex of an individual, while the sex chromosomes are the 23rd pair of chromosomes that determine the sex of an individual. In the female, the sex chromosomes make a fully homologous pair, the X chromosomes. In the male, the sex chromosomes make up a pair consisting of an X and a much smaller Y, which is homologous only part of the X chromosome. Now, who decides? Remember, mom can give X and dad can give X or Y. If dad gives X with mom's X, the child will be a girl. If dad gives Y with mom's X, the child will be a boy. So therefore, dads determine sex of babies. The X and Y chromosomes behave as homologous pair at meiosis. However, the X chromosome differs from the Y chromosome in that the larger X carries many genes not present on the smaller Y. Genes on either the X or Y chromosome are sex-linked traits. Genes found on the X chromosomes can be found in either males or females, while genes found on the Y chromosome can only be found in males. Let's elaborate. Some traits are located on the sex chromosomes, so the inheritance of these traits depends on the sex of the parent carrying the trait. Most known sex-linked traits are X-linked, or carried on the X chromosome. This is probably because the X chromosome is much larger than the Y chromosome. When an X chromosome meets a Y chromosome at fertilization, each sex-linked gene on the X chromosome becomes expressed in the phenotype of the human male produced. This is because his Y chromosome does not possess alleles of any of the sex-linked genes and cannot offer dominance to them. Now, what is sex-linked traits? Sex-linked inheritance is traits carried in either the X or the Y chromosome. A trait that is due to genes present on the X chromosome is more likely to be expressed in males as they have only one X chromosome. The presence of two X chromosomes in females can suppress its expression when one of them has the genes for the trait and the other does not. X-linked traits fall under many categories like recessive, dominant, and codominant, which influence their expression in members of both the sexes. A trait due to a gene in the Y chromosome will only show in males and do not in females. Since males and females do not have the same sex chromosomes, there will be differences between the sexes in how the sex-linked traits or traits linked to genes located on the sex chromosomes are expressed. Sex-linked traits usually refer to traits due to the genes on the X chromosome. In sex-linked inheritance, genes for some traits are found on the sex chromosome X or Y. X-linked disorders include hemophilia or bleeding disease and polar blindness. These are both recessive traits. Most of these traits are recessive. The normal gene is dominant. Heterozygous females are carriers. They do not show the trait, but carry a gene for the trait. Homozygous females have the trait. X-linked disorders show up rarely in females because both of the X sex chromosomes must be recessive. And males with the gene have the trait. They do not show up another X to counterbalance the affected gene. Males have one X sex chromosome. Therefore, it only takes the one X to be affected, have an X-linked disease. Some linked traits are associated with disorders. Who is usually affected by sex-linked disorders? Most are found on the X chromosome, while linked disorders are rare. Males are at much greater risk for inheriting sex disorders because they only inherit one X. So if the X has the allele for the disorder, they will suffer from the disorder. Women are somewhat protected since they have two X chromosomes and are less likely to inherit recessive disorders. If women receive a recessive gene on one X chromosome, they are called carriers because they carry the gene but don't express the disorder. Affected males never pass the disease to their sons. Why? Because men give their Y to their sons. Affected males pass the defective X chromosome to all of their daughters, who are described as carriers. This means they carry the disease-causing allele but generally show no symptoms. And female carriers pass the defective X chromosome to half their sons are affected by the disease and half their daughters who are carriers. The other children inherit the normal copy of the chromosome. Now let's have rules of inheritance for X-linked dominant. Both males and females are affected. Often more females than males are affected. Does not skip generations. Affected sons must have an affected mother. Affected daughters must have either an affected mother or an affected father. Affected fathers will pass the trait on to all their daughters, and affected mothers, if heterozygous, will pass the trait on to one half of their sons and one half of their daughters. Now, rules of inheritance for X-linked recessive trait. More males than females are affected. An affected son can have parents who have the normal phenotype. For a daughter to have the trait, her father must also have it. Her mother must have it or be a carrier. The trait often skips a generation from the grandfather to the grandson. If a woman has the trait, all of her sons will be affected. And pedigrees show only female carriers but no male carriers. Punnett squares are used to predict the outcome of sex-linked inheritance. Most disorders are recessive, some are dominant. The question will tell you. A carrier is a female who is heterozygous for the trait. Now, if a woman is a carrier of an X-linked recessive allele for a disorder and her mate does not have it, their boys will have a 50% chance of inheriting the disorder. None of their girls will have it, but half of them are likely to be carriers. If a man has an X-linked recessive disorder and his mate does not carry the allele for it, all of their girls will be carriers. None of their boys will inherit the harmful allele. Only girls recessive X chromosomes from their fathers. X-linked recessive traits that are not related to feminine body characteristics are primarily expressed in the observable characteristics or phenotype of men. This is due to the fact that men only have one X chromosome. Subsequently, genes on that chromosome not coding for gender are usually expressed in the male phenotype even if they are recessive, since there are no corresponding genes on the Y chromosome in most cases. In women, a recessive allele on one X chromosome is often masked in their phenotype by a dominant normal allele on the other. These explain why women are frequently carriers of X-linked traits but more rarely have them expressed in their own phenotypes. Now this time, let's have an examples of sex-linked traits that include red-green color blindness, hemophilia, Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and hairy ears. What is this? This is a Y-linked inheritance. An example of a Y-linked trait is hairy ears. Y-linked genes or genes carried on the Y chromosome and Hemophilia is an example. Remember, Y-linked genes only show up in males. Let's make a cross with the Y-linked gene. Hairy ears is a Y-linked dominant trait. Use capital H for hairy ears and use small letter h for recessive normal ears. Only Y chromosome, so write it as Y with capital H superscript. If we make a cross with a Y-linked gene, it shows that all girls will be normal and all boys will be hairy ears. As shown in the cross, all of the sons of an affected male will display this Y-linked trait. Sex chromosomes can carry other genes. X-linked genes is genes carried on the X chromosome. Examples includes hemophilia, color blindness, and Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Hemophilia is the absence of one or more proteins necessary for normal blood clotting. Red-green color blindness is difficulty perceiving differences between colors, red or green, blue or yellow, and the Duchenne muscular dystrophy is the progressive weakness and degeneration of skeletal muscles that control movement due to the absence of dystrophin or protein that maintain muscle integrity. Mainly in boys, onset 3 to 5 years, by 12 years can walk and later needs respirator. Let's take a closer look at these examples. Must take into consideration the X and Y chromosomes when doing these problems. In crosses and family trees involving sex-linked genes, the sex chromosomes are represented by the symbols X and Y, and the alleles of the sex-linked gene by appropriate superscript. We refer to X-linked genes with superscript, and this is the genotype of female carrier of hemophilia, this is the genotype of female hemophilia, and this is the genotype of male hemophilia. Hemophilia is an X-linked recessive disorder. It is a blood disorder where the blood does not clot properly. It is caused by a recessive allele carried on the X. For example, the gene is located on the non-homologous region of the X chromosome but not the Y chromosome. The hemophiliac allele is recessive to the normal allele. Hence is sex-linked. Hemophilia is a sex-linked disorder caused by errors in the DNA that codes for the proteins involved in clotting. A minor cut can cause serious injury and demand medical attention. There is no cure for hemophilia. Treatment options with clotting factor transfusions are available. Let's have genetics of hemophilia. The gene for hemophilia is found on the X chromosome. It is a recessive disorder. It is referred to as a sex-linked recessive disorder. Males are more likely to get hemophilia, and females have the possibility of being heterozygous for hemophilia, meaning this makes them a carrier. This time, let's make a cross with an X-linked gene. Hemophilia is an X-linked recessive disorder. Use capital H for normal dominant blood clotting gene and use small letter h for recessive hemophilia gene on X chromosomes, so you write it as X with small letter h superscript. This is the genotype of mother without hemophilia, genotype of mother without hemophilia but carrier, and genotype of mother with hemophilia. This is the genotype of father without hemophilia and the genotype of father with hemophilia. The table summarizes the female genotypes and the male genotypes. Take note that X with capital H superscript is the normal allele and X with small letter h superscript is the hemophilia allele. Family tree of hemophilia. When the father has hemophilia and the mother is unaffected, none of the sons will have hemophilia, and all of the daughters will carry the hemophilia gene. Now, when the mother carries the hemophilia gene and the father is unaffected, there is a 50% chance at each birth that a son will have hemophilia. There is a 50% chance at each birth that a daughter will carry the hemophilia gene.
Another X-linked recessive disorder is red-green color blindness. This is inability to distinguish between red and green. A red-green color blind person does not see the number 29 on the right. In humans, normal vision is capital C, is completely dominant to green color blindness, which is small letter c. Think how difficult some things would be if you have color blindness. People with this type of color blindness cannot tell the difference between red and green. They often see these colors as shades of brown. Boys are much more likely to be colorblind than girls. This is because color blindness is a sex-linked recessive trait. What about this? Can you imagine the life without being able to see the true colors? Color blindness test. Can you identify the numbers? Color blindness, 3 human genes associated with color vision are located on the X chromosome. In males, a defective version of any of these genes produces color blindness. Boys only have 1 chromosome, so if that chromosome carries the gene for color blindness, they will be colorblind. As girls have 2 X chromosomes, a girl can have 1 X chromosome with the colorblind gene and 1 X chromosome with the normal gene for color vision. The dominant normal gene will mask the recessive colorblind gene. Females with 1 colorblindness allele and 1 normal allele are referred to as carriers. They carry the allele but do not express it. How would the female become colorblind? She would have to inherit 2 genes for color blindness, which is very unlikely. Many sex-linked traits are inherited in a recessive manner. Genetics of color blindness. Normal vision is represented by capital C. Red-green color blindness is represented by small c. Heterozygous females are called carriers. Although they are unaffected themselves, there is a 1 in 2 chance or 50% chance that they will pass the allele onto each of the offspring. Let's make a cross with an X-linked gene. Color blindness is an X-linked recessive disease. Use capital C for normal dominant color gene and use small c for recessive color blinded gene. On X chromosome, you're going to write it as X with superscript small c. So this is the genotype of a mother with normal vision, genotype of a mother with normal vision but carrier and colorblind mother. And this is the genotype of a father with normal vision and a father that is colorblind. The table shows 5 possible genotypes for normal and red-green color blindness. First column shows the genotypes and the second column shows the phenotype. Let's work out the genotypes of the following family tree. In this example, the mother is a carrier of a colorblind gene. There is a 50% chance that her son will be colorblind, but unless the father is colorblind, the daughter cannot end up colorblind. In a cross between a carrier mother and a normal father, here's the possible phenotype and genotype. As you can see, there will be 50% normal daughter, 50% carrier daughter, 50% normal son, and 50% colorblind son. Why is color blindness more common in males? Red-green color blindness is rare in females since 2 recessive alleles must be inherited, and it is more common in males where only 1 is needed. Muscular dystrophy. Duchenne muscular dystrophy is the most common form of this disease. Duchenne muscular dystrophy is a sex-linked disorder that results in the weakening or loss of skeletal muscle. Sufferers are severely disabled from an early age. It is caused by a defective version of the gene that codes for a muscle protein. They normally die without passing allele onto the next generation. Skeletal muscles lose their normal structure. Fibrous tissue develops in their place, caused by a recessive allele carried on the X chromosome and is sex-linked. In this family, the allele survives from female carrier to female carrier. Pedigrees. A pedigree is a genetic family tree that shows how prevalent a trait is in a family unit from generation to generation. They are often used to track the expression of genetic conditions and disorders. How to construct a pedigree? A pedigree is a visual showing the pattern of inheritance for a trait or family tree. Let's have the symbols and rules. Squares represent males and circles females. A colored in shape means that the person has the trait, and a half colored in shape means that they are carrying an allele for a recessive trait. Link parents together with a line and then make a vertical line to connect to offspring. Let's have an example. Draw a pedigree showing a cross between a red-eye male fruit fly and a carrier female fruit fly which have 2 males and 2 females. Show all possibilities. Red is dominant to white. Here's the genotypes of the parents. This is the genotype of the male and this is the genotype of the female. Take note that the capital letters superscript represent the dominant allele and the small letters superscript represent the recessive allele. 50% red-eyed male fruit fly, 50% white-eyed male fruit fly, 50% red-eyed female fruit fly, and 50% carrier female fruit fly. The X-linked recessive inheritance affected males will transmit the allele to all the daughters, but not to sons, and homozygous recessive females can arise only from matings in which the father is affected and the mother is affected or a carrier. This pedigree shows the X-linked recessive disorders such as hemophilia and Duchenne muscular dystrophy. With the X-linked dominant inheritance, twice as many females are affected as males. Usually, half the children of an affected female will be affected, regardless of sex, and all the daughters of an affected male will be affected but none of the sons. Another sex-related inheritance trait is sex-limited traits. Here, phenotypic expression is limited to one sex. These genes are not necessarily on the sex chromosomes but are only expressed in the male or female and thought to be hormonally conditioned. Sex-limited genes are genes which are present in both. These are genes that occur in both sexes, probably on the autosomes, but are normally expressed only in the gender having the appropriate hormonal determiner or activator. Throughout the pedigree, the trait appears in only one sex, but it did not occur in all members of that sex. The genes for the trait can be carried and transmitted by the opposite sex, although it is not displayed in that sex because of anatomical or physiological differences. Sex-limited traits are autosomal traits that are expressed in only one sex in a normal condition. And here are some examples of sex-limited traits, such as the genes that control milk yield and quality in dairy cattle, for example, are present in both bulls and cows, but their effects are expressed only in the female cattle. Beard in males, point coloring in chickens normally is visible only in the roosters, and secondary hormonal development. In this picture, it shows the milk production in mammals wherein it can only express in female. The table, it shows the expression of lactation in cattle. In the first column, it shows the female and male genotypes, and the second column, it shows the female and male phenotypes. Homozygous dominant means female lactating, heterozygous means female lactating, and homozygous recessive means female not lactating. For the male genotypes, we have homozygous dominant, male not lactating, heterozygous, male not lactating, and homozygous recessive, male not lactating. Lastly is sex-influence traits. A sex-influence trait is a trait controlled by a pair of alleles found on the autosomal chromosomes, pairs 1 through 22, but its phenotypic expression is influenced by the certain hormones like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, etc. Sex-influence trait can be seen in both sexes but will vary between the sexes or in the degree of the phenotypic expression. Sex-controlled character, also called sex-influenced character, a genetically controlled feature that may appear in organisms of both sexes but is expressed to a different degree in each. Sex-influenced traits are autosomal traits that are influenced by sex. The character seems to act as a dominant in one sex and a recessive in the other. Sex-controlled character, also called sex-influenced character, a genetically controlled feature that may appear in organisms of both sexes but is expressed to a different degree in each. The character seems to act as a dominant in one sex and a recessive in the other. Pattern baldness is an example of sex-influence traits. Pattern baldness can occur in both males and females, however, it is much more common in males. Why is this? Because the pattern baldness Trait is influenced by the hormone testosterone. Here are other examples of sex-influenced traits that includes male pattern baldness, length of index finger, body hair, and muscle mass. Influenced traits are genes not carried on sex chromosome but affected by sex chromosomes of individual with gene. Where sex changes the expression of the gene. Big B is the dominant allele for baldness and small b is the recessive allele for not bald. The combination of alleles for pattern baldness will lead to different phenotypic expressions depending on the sex of the individual. When you make a cross between a not bald dad and a not bald mom who had a bald dad, here's the possible outcome and its phenotypic ratio. Let's dig in. Hemophilia is an X-linked recessive condition where the blood does not clot normally, resulting in excessive bleeding. What are the phenotypes of the children of the above parents? This is the genotype of a normal female. This is the genotype of a normal female but carrier. This is the genotype of a normal male. And this one is the genotype of hemophiliac male. Well done! People who have hemophilia have to be extremely careful and cautious about not falling down or even just getting a paper cut. Let's remember, sex-linked traits show up in different percent in males and females because they move with the sex chromosomes. Y-linked genes only show up in males, X-linked recessive genes appear more often in males than females, and females can be carriers for X-linked recessive traits. Males can never be carriers for X-linked recessive genes that either have trait or are normal. Sex-limited traits is a characteristic only appears in one of the sexes, and sex-influenced traits express in both sexes but more frequently in one than the other sex. Let's apply. Solve for the sex-linked Punnett square problems. Number 1. Hemophilia is a recessive trait linked to the X-sex chromosome. What are the genotypic phenotypic ratios of a cross between a carrier female and a normal male? And number 2. Red-green color blindness is a recessive trait linked to the X-sex chromosome. A red-green color blind female and a normal male have a child. What is the probability, regardless of gender, that it will be red-green color blind? Let's evaluate. Identify the sex inheritance traits. Choose your answer in the box. Sex-linked trait, sex-limited trait, and sex-influenced trait. Number 1. Hemophilia. Number 2, baldness. Number 3, color blindness. Number 4, beard in males. And number 5, milk production in mammals. You may pause the video to answer this. So that's the end of our lesson. I hope you learned something new today. Watch out for the next video lesson in science. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This has been your teacher, Rosalie Custodio, saying learning science is fun, cool, and awesome. Until next time, students, have a nice day!